Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Harijana Krishna Padam Sadhana Lalita Sri Vishakhanitanscha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda
Hare Krishna, Raghuveer Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandat Pranams to you and all the assembled devotees. Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Are we ready, Prabhu? Can we start, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna devotees, Dandavat Pranam. Welcome to Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Today we have a special class by our a special devotee from Dubai. So he will be sharing the nectar from Srimad Bhagavatam. The topic is how to stop lamentation. We will be continuing with our existing series of Prithu Maharaj going back to Godhead. The topic is how to stop lamentation, and Prabhuji will be sharing the nectar from Srimad Bhagavatam 4.23.19.21. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, over to you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, my Dandat Pranams to you. Not special devotee.
Prabhuji, you want us to open any slokas, or you will be sharing that?
Well, I have the material. If you want, then I'll have to switch over to the other one. Should I present or should I
You can
just
share, Prabhu? You can share, Prabhuji. No problem, Prabhuji. If you have the material, you can share.
So then I will, Prabhuji, just give me 1 minute. I'll come from the other device because
Okay,
this one.
Or you can send it to me or by WhatsApp, Prabhuji. We can.
I think no, it's quite big, Prabhu. It will be.
Okay, Prabhuji. Yeah. You can share, Prabhuji, directly.
Give me 1 minute then. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Now you can share the slide, Prabhu.
Is it visible, Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhuji. It's visible, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji, it is visible, Prabhuji.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji. So, Hare Krishna to all the devotees. My Dandot pranams to each one of you at your lotus feet. Thank you for giving me this seva. And not special devotee, outcast devotee. I was in Bangalore, I have come outcast now. We'll start with Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। सब इकट्ठे भक्तों की जय। So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam 4:23:19, and today's discussion will be on how to stop lamentation. We'll see what Srimad Bhagavatam tells us, because everybody is lamenting only, and what Prabhupada's purports are giving us information on that. So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam 4:23:19 to 21. Archinam Maharagi Tatpatni Anugata Vanam Sukumari Atad Arhacha Yat Padabhyam Sparshanam Bhuva. Translation: the queen, the wife of Prithu Maharaj, whose name was Archi, followed her husband into the forest. Since she was a queen, her body was very delicate. Although she did not deserve to live in the forest, she voluntarily touched her lotus feet to the ground. Purport: because Prithu Maharaj's wife was the queen and also a daughter of a king, she never experienced walking on the ground, for queens used to never come out of the palace. They certainly never went to the forest and tolerated all the difficulties of living in the wilderness. In Vedic civilization, there are hundreds of similar examples of such renunciation on the part of queens and the dedication to the husband. The goddess of fortune, Mother Sita, followed her husband, Ramchandra, when he went to the forest. Lord Ramchandra went to the forest in compliance with the order of his father, Maharaj Dashrath. But Mother Sita was not so ordered. Nonetheless, she voluntarily accepted the path of her husband. Similarly, Gandhari, the wife of King Dhritarashtra, also followed her husband into the forest. Gandhari also did the same. Being the wives of great personalities like Prithu, Ramchandra, and Dhritarashtra, these were ideal chaste women. Such queens also instructed the general people by showing them how to become a chaste wife and follow the husband in every stage of life. When the husband is king, she sits beside him as a queen, and when he goes to the forest, she also follows despite having to tolerate all kind of difficulties in living in the forest. Therefore, it is said here, Atad Arha, that although she did not want to touch her feet to the ground, she nonetheless accepted all difficulties when she went to the forest with her husband. 4:23:20. अतीव भर्तुर्व्रतधर्म निष्ठया शुश्रूषया चारस देह यात्रया न आवनीतद अरितम परिकर क्षिप्तापि स प्रयेशकर स्पर्शन मान निवृत्तः. Translation: although she was not accustomed to such difficulties, Queen Archi followed her husband in the regulative principles of living in the forest like great sages. She lay down on the ground and ate only fruits, flowers, and leaves, and because she was not fit for these activities, she became frail and thin. Yet, because of pleasure she derived in serving her husband, she did not feel any difficulties. Purport. The word Bhartur, Vrat Dharma, Nishtaya indicate that a woman's duty or religious principle is to serve her husband in all conditions. In Vedic civilization, a man is taught from the beginning of his life to become a brahmachari, then an ideal grahastha, then vanaprastha, then a sannyasi, and the wife is taught just to follow the husband strictly in all conditions of life. After the period of brahmacharya, a man accepts a householder's life, and the woman is also taught by her parents to be a chaste wife. Thus, when a girl and the boy are united, both are trained for a life dedicated to a higher purpose. The boy is trained to execute his duty in accordance with the higher purpose of life, and the girl is trained to follow him. The chaste wife's duty is to keep her husband pleased in householder life in all respects, and when the husband retires from the family life, she is to go to the forest and adopt the life of Vanaprastha or Vanvasi. At that time, the wife is to follow her husband and take care of him, just as she took care of him in householder life. But when the husband takes the renounced order of life, namely sannyas, the wife is to return home and become a saintly woman, setting an example for her children and daughters in law and showing them how to live a life of austerity. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas, his wife Vishnu Priya Devi, although only 16 years old, also took the vow of austerity due to her husband's leaving home. She chanted her beads, and after finishing one round, she collected 1 grain of rice. In this way, as many rounds as she chanted, she would receive the same number of grains and then cook them and so take prasad. This is called austerity. Even today in India, widows or women whose husbands have taken sannyas follow the principle of austerity, even though they live with their children. Prithu Maharaj's wife, Archi, was steadily determined to execute the duty of a wife, and while her husband was in the forest, she followed him in eating only fruits and leaves and lying down on the ground. Since a woman's body is considerably more delicate than a man's, Queen Archie became very frail and thin, parikarshita. When one engages in austerity, his body generally becomes lean and thin. Becoming fat is not a very good qualification in spiritual life, because a person who is engaged in spiritual life must reduce the comforts of the body, namely eating, sleeping, and mating, to a minimum. Although Queen Archie became very thin from living in the forest according to regulative principles, she was not unhappy, for she was enjoying the honor of serving her great husband. Srimad Bhagavatam 4:23-21. देहं विपन्न अखिल देहं विपन्न अखिल चेतनादिकं पत्यु पृथिव्या दैतस्य चात्मनः आलकस्य किंचित च विलप्य सा सती चिताम अथार्पयद अद्रिसानुम. Synonyms: deham, body; vipinna, completely failing; akhila, all; chetana, feeling; adikam, symptoms; patyu, of her husband; prithvyah, the world; daitasya, of the merciful; cha atmanah, also of herself; alakasya, by seeing; kinchit, very little; cha, and vilapya, lamenting; sa, she; sati, the chaste; chitam, unto the fire; atha, now; aropyata, placed; adri, hill; sanuni, on the top. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. When Queen Archie saw that her husband, who had been so merciful to her and the earth, no longer showed symptoms of life, she lamented for a little while. She lamented for a little while and then built a fiery pyre on the top of a hill and placed the body of her husband on it. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. After seeing all the life symptoms in her husband stop, the queen lamented for a while. The word kinchit means for a little while. The queen was completely aware that her husband was not dead. All those symptoms of life, action, intelligence, and sense perception had ceased, as stated in Srimad Bhagavad Gita 2.13. Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhirastatranam huyati. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body, from the boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes from into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. When a living entity transfers from one body to another, a process generally known as death, a sane man does not lament. He knows that the living entity is not dead, but is simply transferred from one body to another. The queen should have been afraid of being alone in the forest with the body of her husband, but since she was a great wife of a great personality, she lamented for a while, but immediately understood that she had many duties to perform. Thus, instead of wasting her time in lamentation, she immediately prepared a fiery pyre on the top of a hill and then placed the body of her husband on it to be burned. Maharaja Prithu is described here as Daita, for not only was he the king of earth, but he treated the earth as his protected child. Similarly, he protected his wife also. It was the duty of the king to give protection to everyone, especially to the earth or land which he ruled, as well as the citizens and his family members. Since Prithu Maharaj was a perfect king, he gave protection to everyone, and therefore he is described here as Daita. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाच्च शलाकया चक्षुन्मितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपात्वं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारणं परमानंद माधवं। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, शीला प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, सब इकट्ठे भक्तों की जय। Hare Krishna, Dandavat pranams to each one of you. Thank you so much for giving your sadhu sangha and allowing me to serve our dear Lord and his dear devotees. So today we are discussing that Prithu Maharaj left finally his body, and we see in Srimad Bhagavatam in 4:23-21 and in the 19 Prabhupada writes in the purport that like Sita Maya and Gandhari, they also followed their husbands. Similarly, here we see that Archi was also, she followed her husband, and when she saw that Deham Vipanna Akhila, completely the Chetana has completely stopped, meaning he has passed away. At that time, it's very interesting to see that she kinchit cha vilapya, only little she lamented. It's a very this shloka is full of mysteries and answers as to in case somebody leaves us permanently or temporarily, then in that case, even the wife, it's written here that kinchit cha vilapya, she only lamented. Vilap means to lament. She only was doing the lamentation for kinchit, very little. Why not long? Only little she did lamentation. Translation clearly says she lamented for a little while. Now Prabhupada explains beautifully in this that why did she lament only a little? Why she didn't sit down there and started lamenting for very long time? She only lamented for little. Prabhupada in his purport beautifully gives actually in the purport, bringing in all the three yogas, whether be it Gyan Marg, Gyan Yoga, whether it's Karma Yoga or Bhakti Yoga, he straight away describes why it is so. So today we will see what is Prabhupada's heart wanting to tell us about how to reduce this lamentation, because this verse is telling that even in the most extreme trying circumstances, the wife is lamenting only little. So there must be a way to find a way how to stop the lamentation. So first of all, Prabhupada gives from the Jnana Yoga. He elaborates that because she knew the difference between body and the soul, as stated in 2.13, देहिनोऽस्मिन् यथा देहे कौमारं यौवनं जरा तथा देहांतर प्राप्तिर धीरस्तत्र न मुह्यति. So she knew this. Prabhupada explains in the purport that this body is continuously changing from boyhood to youthhood to middle age to old age, and going by the same logic, if I am the same and the body is changing, then by logic I should then, after leaving this body, get another body. Therefore the soul is not dying, which we clearly, she then remembers this, and therefore she lamented a little while. She did not lament long because she did not want to lament for the body, for the soul. She was clear that the lamentation is not required because body is no more relevant, it's the soul, and he was not dead. He was aware. So this is the purport from the Jnana Yoga point of view, from Jnana Marg. Now let us see what Prabhupada further gives. Now he is referring to the Karma Yoga and to the Bhakti Yoga. Why she did not lament? She lamented for a while, but immediately understood that she had many duties to perform. Meaning, if one does Karma Yoga, that means the focus has to be on the Karma Yoga and not on lamentation. And therefore also she only lamented for a while because she wanted to focus on duty and not on lamentation. See, interesting thing is that the mind can only focus on one thing at a time. If the mind is filled with the concept that I am not the body, then the same mind cannot simultaneously lament. Similarly, if the mind is filled with doing the duty, then same time the mind cannot be lamenting, because at a time one thing only mind can think of. Now let's see what Prabhupada is saying ahead. In the later on verses in 4:23-26, when she enters the funeral pyre, Queen Archie, at that time we find that the Devata's wives, the denizens, are watching that one side she has entered the funeral pyre herself. In the funeral pyre of, she sets up the funeral pyre, and then she herself also enters into that fire. And Prabhupada writes there beautifully, the ladies in the higher planetary systems were capable of seeing both upward and downward, and therefore they were seeing actually that here Prithu Maharaj left the body. She has now created the pyre, funeral pyre. She lit the fire, and then she herself also entered in the funeral pyre. So they are now in the middle. The Devata's wives, the denizens, are in the heavenly planets, which are above the earthly planets. But they can see that when they look down, they could see that the bodies are burning. But when they look upwards, they could see, Prabhupada writes, Archie was entering into fire, and when they looked upward, they could see how they are being carried in 2 airplanes to the Vaikuntha Lokas. All of this is possible simply by Durvibhavyena Karmana, inconceivable activity. So Prithu Maharaj was a pure devotee, and his wife Queen Archie simply followed her husband. Thus they can be both considered as pure devotee. Here comes the Karma Yoga, becomes the Bhakti Yoga. So Prithu Maharaj is actually plenary expansion of Lord Vishnu, as we know from Srimad Bhagavatam. And Queen Archi is plenary expansion of Lakshmi Devi. And Prithu Maharaj is not just a Maharaj, he was a pure devotee. And Queen Archi followed a pure devotee. When a devotee follows a pure devotee, that is nothing but devotional service. Especially when one is following either Lord Vishnu, his plenary expansions, or if someone is following a pure devotee, then the person who is following is also doing devotional service. That's what all in Hare Krishna movement we are also doing. Follow Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, follow Srila Prabhupada, follow Lord Krishna, follow Radha Rani, follow the acharyas, follow the devotees. This is devotional service. So therefore Prabhupada brings in this point that she only lamented little because she actually focused on doing her devotional service, which was also her duty, the real duty, and that is to follow a pure devotee, which was her husband in this case, and thus they can both be considered as pure devotees. So this gives us a clue. It's not clearly still much more elaborations will come by Prabhupada later, not in here verse, which we will see that when one does devotional service, again the lamentation is reduced and stopped. And therefore Prabhupada has written that Kinchit cha vilapya, she lamented for a little while. This is from here. So therefore we can see that how to get rid of lamentation, learning from Archi's lesson. Either one focuses on Gyan Yoga, then automatically lamentation will not happen, which Prabhupada explains, which is also a foundation of Bhakti Yoga. Also, this is knowledge. All the devotees know this. Second and third Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga can be merged together because the real Karma Yoga is Bhakti Yoga only. And therefore, if one follows a pure devotee, then there is little focus on lamentation. Same thing in Ramayana, we see that when Tara was lamenting for Bali, and Lord Ram had shot the arrow to Bali. At that time, Tara was unconsolable. And then Lord Ram says, look, here is the body. So why are you crying? And then he explains the Dehanosmin Yathadehi. He explains the soul and the spirit and the body difference, and then her lamentation reduces, Ramayana tells us. So now what we will see today is that half an hour more, right? Okay. Why Prabhupada has written these reasons for stopping lamentations? In the translation it is given, but Prabhupada has brought in this information. It's not directly given in the translation that why she was lamenting a little bit. But all the purports, everything which Prabhupada writes is based on Srimad Bhagavatam because he's a super Bhagavata, the topmost Bhagavata. And any proof where lamentation was stopped must be the basis of the Srimad Bhagavatam and our great acharyas, and by Prabhupada himself he has written, therefore it is conclusively said. But we will see that what are the other areas in Srimad Bhagavatam which Prabhupada would have thought while writing this purport, that why these are the reasons due to which lamentation can be stopped or reduced. So today's discussion we will see from Srimad Bhagavatam parallels. Here Prabhupada has given the conclusion, and this conclusion is the conclusion of our Acharya. This must be based on Srimad Bhagavatam, which it is, and we will see where all similar parallel can be drawn. where the lamentation was reduced either by Gyan Marg or by Karma Yoga Bhakti Yoga. Where else this has happened? So we will spend today some time on this aspect. So you see, if we see the Katha of Chitraketu, Chitraketu, as you remember, he was a king in Shurasena province and he had 10 million wives, but not even a single child. And so he was lamenting, first of all, for not having a child. And he was a very opulent king, and Angira Rishi, who is Lord Brahma's son, he comes and meets Chitraketu. And Chitraketu then is very, very dejected, is not looking happy. And then there is a conversation between Angira Rishi and Chitraketu that why are you like this? And there is a full discussion is there. Finally, Angira Rishi says that you are not looking happy. What's the matter, my dear? And therefore Chitraketu says that I don't have a child. Angira Rishi says, well, it's not supposed to be there, but he says, no, I want. And therefore Chitraketu is given a boon. And Angira Rishi says, okay, fine, no problem. Take sweet rice, offer it to Twashta, and you will have a son. But the son's name will be Harsha Shoka. Meaning Harsh means jubilation, Shoka means lamentation. We can see, I also have in my life son called Harsha Shoka. Sometime I'm in Harsh, sometime I'm in Shoka. So this is not just Chitraketu. So what happens is that then this rice is offered to his first wife, Kritadyuti, and he had married 10 million wives only because the children were not there, so he wanted to have. So one by one. Now when Kritadyuti had the child called Harshashoka, we find from Srimad Bhagavatam that Chitraketu was completely attached to the son and to the wife Kritadyuti, and he forgot 10 million minus one wife. And therefore there was great envy among the rest of the wives, and they finally poison this child called Harshashoka. And there is a huge lamentation. We can imagine that only child with great difficulty born, and then he dies. Again we find that Naradji and Angira Rishi come. This time Naradji is also there. Naradji is also son of Brahma, both of them brothers. They came to Rishis, to Chitraketu. And then there is a discussion. And here again, coming back to here, because they were lamenting, because Chitraketu and his wife and everybody was lamenting too much. At that time, Angira Rishi and Naradji tell that, look, it is not in your control, my dear. Just like sand, Krishna brings people together. And just like the wave of the river comes, the sand is dispersed. Similarly, all the entities are again dispersed. So then, if it is not in your control, bringing together and dispersing, why are you lamenting? And then, just like here, Prabhupada mentions, Dehonasmin yatha dehe, that she thought, Archi gave thought to the fact that my husband is not actually dead. It's only the body which has gone. Same thing is given here. That what is the relation with the dead body and the body of the son which is lying in front? And then they ask that, Chitraketu, why are you lamenting? The body is in front of you, but the soul has gone. So why are you lamenting? Was this person your son before? Is he going to be son later? And if you are lamenting for the body of the son, that body is in front of you, then why are you lamenting? The body is still there. But if you are lamenting for the soul doesn't die. So why are you lamenting? So this is another example of where the Gyan Yoga has been used to reduce the lamentation, which Prabhupada has mentioned in this, that why Queen Archi lamented a little. And later on, actually, they bring back, Naraji brings back the son. And the son, he tells the son, Harshishok, my dear, see, your parents are lamenting, the kingdom is lamenting, please come back and enjoy the kingdom. And the son says, my dear, I am transmigrating so many bodies. In which birth were they my parents? When Chitraketu and Kritadyuti heard that, their lamentation was gone. They understood that what is the real knowledge, the realization, the real eyes is realize. Similarly, here Prabhupada quotes for Archi that because of the knowledge she had that the person is not actually dead, she lamented little only for the body. So one parallel we have seen, that Prabhupada is always, wherever you'll see, it is only Srimad Bhagavatam. Purport of Srila Prabhupada is Bhagavatam because it's written by Bhagavata. And we see these parallels just for our reference to have some more connection as to why Prabhupada has been writing. Let's see now the next one. Now let's see how the Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga is used, or is, once that is done, then it stops the lamentation. Now we remember that Yudhishthir Maharaj, Vidura was actually insulted by Duryodhan, and after getting the insult, Duryodhan told, because Vidura had told in front of Dhritarashtra that, my dear, you please kick out this person from here, your assembly, otherwise nothing will be left, you will be completely ruined. But at that point in time, Dhritarashtra was, because he was blind not only by the eyes but by the realization also, he was blind, he kept quiet, and Duryodhan told him, we will only leave your breath, get out from here, you are a Dasi Putra. And Bhagavatam tells us he did not feel sorry. Vidura could see the internal potency of Krishna applying on himself and external potency of Krishna applying on Duryodhan. Why? Because he could see that Duryodhan is heading for he's going to be see, we should never try to come first, because if we are coming always first, meaning we have to leave also first, just in a humorous way. So he could see that Duryodhan is nearing the finishing line. So he kept his bow and he could see internal energy on himself. Why? Because later on, when he left the kingdom, the fighting happened. If he were there, he had to fight for Duryodhan, and he escaped the war by just because of this insult. So it also means that having insult does not necessarily mean it is bad for us. It has saved Vidura. Now, but see what the beauty is of the pure devotees of Krishna. Vidura met Uddhav, Vidura met Maitri Rishi, and by that time the war was over, the Kauravas were finished, and Yudhishthir Maharaj was the king of the universe, and Dhritarashtra was still staying with him. Now Vidura goes back, and after going back, he actually goes and also gives a transcendental insult to Dhritarashtra to wake him up, to make him see and wake up from the wake up call, to wake him up from the imminent disaster he is going to face. And Bhagavatam tells us that he tells him many things. You are eating food like a dog from a person who has killed your son, which is Bhima. And therefore his eyes were opened. He said, now at least you leave this. You are still wanting to live in comforts. When will you wake up? And we find that Dhritarashtra leaves with Vidura and Gandhari follows. In our shloka today, Prabhupada has written that great wives like Gandhari followed Dhritarashtra. So let's see what is the parallel between Archie's episode and this episode. We can see that Archie also had entered into the funeral pyre and followed a pure devotee. Gandhari also did the same, and therefore Prabhupada has given the parallel. We can see. Now what happens? The lamentation, coming back to that. Yudhishthir Maharaj started lamenting when he did not find Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, and he did not find his uncle Vidur. So Bhagavatam tells us, Ajata Shrattu Kritamatru Hutagni Viprannatva Tilago Bhumi Rukmehi Graham Pravishto Guru Vandanaya Nachapashyat Pitarau Sobalimcha. First of all, in the morning when Yudhishthir Maharaj got up, he straight away went and did his Nitya Karm, and he gave the offered Ahuti, he paid his obeisances to the Supreme Lord, to the Devatas, and then he bowed down, and then he gave grains, go, bhumi, rukmai, gold, etc. to everybody, to the Brahmanas, and then he entered to greet and take blessings from the elders. But nacha apashyat pitarau saubalimcha. He could not see his uncles and Gandhari. So therefore, what happens is that Yudhishthir Maharaj gets full of anxiety and starts lamenting and crying. And then he asks Sanjay, Sanjay, where is our uncle who's so old and blind? And he has been my well-wisher. Where is he gone? Has he and wife taken plunge in Ganges because we killed his sons? And therefore, because of the compassion, Yudhishthir Maharaj started crying and weeping, and Sanjay was also not able to really, he said, even I don't know, because he was the secretary of Dhritarashtra. He said, even I don't know. Now when they started lamenting, how did their lamentation stop? Bhagavatam tells us very nicely, which is for very practical application, which Prabhupada has given in the purport also. We'll elaborate from this katha also. At that point in time, Narad ji arrives with his tabura, and Maharaj Yudhishthir immediately greets him. And the first thing Maharaj Yudhishthir asks is that, Naradji, I'm completely grief-stricken. I don't know where my uncles have gone and Gandhari has gone, and I cannot stop my lamentation. And because you are the like a captain of a ship, please direct us what we should do. Please tell us what we should do. Now see the knowledge which Naradji gives. And this is the same knowledge which Prabhupada has explained in the purport of why Archie did less lamentation. What is knowledge number one? Naradji said, Ma kinchin shucho rajan. Ma, never. Kanchana, shucho. Don't do shoch. Don't lament rajan. Yatishwar vasham jagat. This entire universe is in the control of Lord Krishna. Baba, he is the owner, no? So he should lament if some changes are happening here. You are not the owner. Why are you lamenting? Don't lament, Naradji said. Why? The knowledge is Yad Ishwar Vasham Jagat. It looks like a very ordinary statement that everything is in the control of Krishna. But it's the biggest knowledge for stopping and reducing the lamentation. Jahi vidhi rakhe ram, tahi vidhi rahiye. The way he has decided, that is how it's going to happen. So he said, look, it's not in your control, my dear. Don't lament. Loka sapala yasyeme. All these Lokpal and Devtas, vahanti balim ishituha, they worship for protection. Sa samyungti bhutani. All the living entities, samyungti, they are brought together. Saeva viyumticha. He is the one who disperses. So if you are not in control, if Krishna is the controller, then why are you lamenting? So this is the knowledge which he gives. Yat Ishwar Vasham Jagat. So for example, if I am in office, now I am a salaried employee, and suppose there is a huge loss in the business. Yes, I will feel bad, and at the end of it, my selfish motive, I will lose my job. But the real lamentation will not be with me, it will be with the owner, because the person has lost millions. In this case, of course, this is just a mundane example. So in this case, Krishna is not going to lament anything. He is generating billions and trillions of these universes. But just to see this, the principle that Naradji is saying, why are you lamenting? Because you are not controlling, you are not the owner should lament. No, and the owner has so much, he is not going to lament. He is the one who has created and recreate. And therefore he brings together. So therefore, with this knowledge, he gives it to Yudhishthir Maharaj. The important thing is, I am also speaking right now. See, when the parrot is there, one can teach parrot Ram, 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 Ram. But when the cat catches hold of the throat of the parrot, that time the parrot says tie, tie, tie. Forgets Ram, Ram, Ram. Same is the case with me also. I am saying right now, but at that time we need sadhu sangha. That is why we have this seva. That if I am forgetting, somebody will come and say, listen, this is what Naradji said, and why are you lamenting? Because Krishna is in control, you are not in control. So we should remind each other. That is called sadhu sangha. Reminding each other of the knowledge given by Prabhupada, by Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is the first knowledge. Second knowledge, say, same thing. Now, Yudhishthir Maharaj can say, you are telling me to reduce lamentation, Naradji, but do you have any experience? You are giving big, big talks. But do you have any experience whatsoever that like this the lamentation can stop? Naradji is walking the talk. When Naradji here recalls that in his previous birth, when we know that his mother was serving the devotees, the Vaishnavas, and she passes away, and at that time Naradji is only 5 years old. At that time, what did Naradji thought to himself? He said, Sa aswatantra na kalpashit. She, the mother, was not swatantra, aswatantra. She was dependent. The mother was dependent. Yogakshemam mamechati. Even though she wanted to do a lot for me, but she was dependent. She was not swatantra. Why? Ishasya vashe loko yoshadaru mai yatha. Ishasya vashe loko. Same thing he is repeating to Yudhishthir Maharaj. See here. Yad Ishwar Vasham Jagat. Same thing he told himself at that time. Ishasya hi vashe loko. Everybody is in control of Lord Krishna. To what extent? Yoshadaru mai yatha. Just like the puppeteer, daru mai means daru brahm, made of wood. Just like the puppeteer controls the puppet, just like that Krishna is controlling everybody in this universe. This is what he thought when his mother passed away. Instead of lamenting, he himself went to the forest to do devotional service. So therefore he is telling the same thing. See, this parampara everywhere is the same thing. Same thing with Archi. We will see this. Archi, what did she do? She also did devotional service. She also understood it's not in my control. So therefore Naradji said that, my dear, first knowledge is you are not the controller. Therefore, please don't lament. It's everything is in control of Krishna. Lamentation is, yes, one should little bit lament grief when there is separation. Yes, we should do that. But lament little, kinchit vilapya, not very, very long time, because the focus is on what is to be done. The first knowledge that we are not the controllers. Okay. So then we know that from Srimad Bhagavatam, Naradji actually went to the forest taking this as Lord's mercy, because he understood that Yat Ishwaram Jagat. And Naradji also tells to what extent it is under the control of Lord Krishna. Yatha gavo nasi protas, just like the nose of the buffalo or cow has the string. Similarly, tantyam baddhasya damibi, just like the rope is holding the nose of the animal of the cow. Similarly, vat tantyam nama bhir baddha vahanti balim ishituha. Similarly, in the network of Vak Tantyam, network of Vedic hymns, Krishna is controlling everybody. Nobody can do much maneuvering. Just little bit, the cow can go little bit 100 yards, 50 meters if that much is the rope, or 10 feet. That much is the movement allowed. That's all. So now we have seen this. Krishna has confirmed in Bhagavad Gita also that I am the controller, Baba. You are not the controller. Vayyadhyakshena prakriti suyate sa characharam. Knowledge too, in this case, which Naradji gave to Yudhishthir Maharaj for getting rid of lamentation. This is a wonderful translation here, which no matter what religion, which thought, what philosophy is followed by any universe, nobody can challenge this translation in either of the religions. This is very super. Let's see the translation of 113.44, which Naradji tells to Yudhishthir Maharaj. O king, in all circumstances, whether you consider the soul to be an eternal principle, that the soul will not die, or you consider the material body to be perishable, that the body will go, or everything to exist in absolute truth. If you say that everything is going to ever exist in the Nirakar, or everything to be an explicable combination of matter and spirit, whether you think that there's a body is matter and the spirit is separate, feelings of separation are due only to illusory affection and nothing more. This is a universal truth. So he said that, you see, no matter what thought process you are from, please understand matter is going to change. And body is matter. And therefore, he writes in the translation, in our daily experience, we may find so many transformations of matter from one form to another, but we do not lament such changing features. Every day, all the matter is changing, but we are not lamenting. In either of the above cases, the force of divine energy is uncheckable. No one has any hand in it, and thus there is no cause of grief. He said, please don't lament. See this one, that matter is bound to change, and every day it is changing. Okay, I think time is of the essence. I will move a little faster. Knowledge number 3 to stop lamentation. This is a fantastic shloka to stop lamentation. Naradji said, Kala karma guna adhino deho yam pancha bhautika. This body, Baba, is made of 5 dahik. What is that? Bhumi rapo anal vayu khammar buddhi revcha. Is made up of 5 elements. Deho yam. Kala karma guna adhino. This body is controlled by time, karma, and by the 3 gunas. Kathayam anyastu gopayet. Are Baba, who can katham anyams? Who can give gopayet? Who can give protection? Sarpagrasato yathaparam. The one who is already sitting in the mouth of the snake of time, the one who is already going to die, how that person can save somebody else? So, hey Yudhishthir, how can you save somebody else, Dhritarashtra or anybody, when you yourself are sitting in the mouth of Sarpagrasat Yathaparam, the snake of time? You yourself are going to finish off in some time. How can you save others? So therefore, lament little, but don't lament too much. You pray for them, and but see how we can get rid of this Kala Sarpa. This is the Kala Sarp, the time rupee Sarp. He's saying, so therefore, this is fantastic. First knowledge was everything is controlled by Krishna to stop lamentation. Second knowledge is that matter is going to change no matter what the thought process is. Third knowledge is that I am myself sitting in the Kala Rupi Sarp, in the time snake mouth. I'm going to perish. How am I going to somebody else? So therefore, what is the use of too much lamentation? Yes, we should pray, we should do everything. So we have to do SOS, save our souls, and that will help actually. So three knowledge is given. So method to stop lamentation in Srimad Bhagavatam, one we saw from Chitraketu, which Prabhupada quotes there, which is the Gyan Marg. Then here he quotes that she followed the pure devotee and she reaches actually the Vaikuntha planets following her husband. Here we see the three things which are given to stop lamentation, that everything is controlled by Krishna, matter will change, and we are sitting in the mouth of the time serpent. And therefore, he said, you should look at what one should do instead of lamenting is the answer given here, which Prabhupada explains there, Archi applied. What did he tell Yudhishthir Maharaj? Tad idam Bhagavan Rajena Eka Atma Atmanam Swadrak Antaro Bhati Pashyatam Maya Yorudha. What you should do, my dear, is Tat idam Bhagavan Rajan, towards Lord Krishna, Pashyatam. You look at him. Translation says, therefore, O king, you should look to the Supreme Lord only, who is one without second and who manifests himself by different energies and is both within and without. So we can see here that when one sees towards the Lord, the mind is absorbed in that, the other thoughts of lamentation automatically drop. So he is saying, look, you are not the controller. Matter is going to change. You're sitting in the mouth of time serpent. Therefore, please don't lament too much. And what you do is you should look to the Supreme Lord. In Ramayana, it comes that when Bharatji is going to meet Lord Ram and request him to come back, when he thinks of himself, he is lamenting that what have I done, what has my mother Kaikeyi done, and his steps going back in the reverse direction. But when he thinks about the mercy of the Lord, his steps become 20 times faster and he starts running towards the Lord. So Naradji is telling that look at the Supreme Lord and see what Prabhupada writes in the purport, which exactly matches with what he has written in the purport of Archi in the case, in the shloka which we are taking. Yudhishthir Maharaj, one should look unto the Lord, one should not be disturbed by the so-called manifestations of happiness and distress. And then Prabhupada writes, I'll go straight away to save some time. Bona fide spiritual masters who look unto the Supreme Lord. Okay, then he says, Yudhishthir Maharaj is advised by Naradji, therefore, not to be disturbed by the affairs of so-called happiness and distress, but to look only unto the Lord to execute the mission for which the Lord has descended. And then Prabhupada writes, that was his prime duty. Similarly, in Archi's case, in 4:23:21, Prabhupada writes, she lamented for a while, but immediately understood that she has many duties to perform, to follow pure devotee and do devotional service. Similarly, here Prabhupada writes that Naradji told, this is, Bhagavatam is completely fluid, it's the same everywhere. And therefore, Naradji told Yudhishthir Maharaj, Baba, you don't please lament. You look at the Lord and do your duty. What is that duty? Duty is to serve the Lord in his mission. And what is that? That is his devotional service. Meaning, looking at the Lord is to do devotional service. He said, please don't lament, but what you should do is do devotional service. Same thing Archi also did. She did not lament much, but remembering her duties, and she followed the pure devotee. She did the devotional service by following the pure devotee. And here also same thing is mentioned by Naradji to Yudhishthir Maharaj, that your duty is to serve Krishna, not to lament. So quickly summarizing, instead of lamenting, we should look at the Lord. Okay, I think Prabhuji, how much more time can I take 3-4 more minutes? Is it possible? Or
Yes, Prabhuji, you can go ahead, Prabhuji.
okay, what is the final cutoff, Prabhu? So all put together, just 3 minutes, I think, is more.
Yes, Prabhuji. 3
Okay.
minutes you can go ahead.
So instead of lamenting, we should look to the Lord. Now again, looking at the Lord can be looked into different ways. Different people look in different ways. But for devotees, it's Krishna. How we can look at different ways at Krishna? Vadanti tat vidha tattvam yat jnanam advayam. The knowledgeable people say that the tattva manifests in 3 ways. How? Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti Shabdate. One can look at the Lord and Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, and as Bhagavan. For us, and Prabhupada mentions clearly, and it is a fact, that the ultimate is to keep doing devotional service to Lord Krishna, and therefore lamentation automatically will reduce. And we can see his hand in everything in 927, for example. So basically, to look at Krishna is to do devotional service, and this is what Queen Archi also did. The purpose of sadhu sang is to remind each other, so that we don't forget. At least I know I'm forgetting all the time, and mind can only think at one time. Either it can lament or it can do devotional service. Devotional service meaning no lamentation. It is natural. So we have to remind each other. So Naradji also did not disclose Krishna's departure to Yudhishthir Maharaj. Naradji did not focus on the lamentation. He focused on his duty, which was his continuous duty. Not natural, eternal duty is to do devotional service. Dharma projit kaitavo. That is the real duty occupation, to do unmotivated. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokshaje ahetuki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. Instead of lamentation, if we want complete satisfaction, then look at Krishna is the advice. Do devotional service. That is what Queen Archi also did. And the same purport is written in both the places. And then he says to Yudhishthir that, look, the Dhritarashtra has gone to Himalayas. He will be passing away his life. And then same way, just like Archi, Gandhari, which is quoted in this verse, she will also follow in the same way. She followed in the same way. And while outside observing her husband, at that time, Gandhari also enters, because Prabhupada writes in the purport that the burning sensation which these divine personalities, they feel without the husband, without the pure devotee, is far greater than the pain of burning in fire. So they entered, because it is not mandatory. It is not by force. It's very clear. When Lord Ram, when Dashrath Maharaj passed away, at that time, Kaushalya Mata was wanting to go to do sati, but she was stopped, and she agreed that she will be able to see Lord Ram again and do devotional service. That is more important. And here also, like Gandhari did, Queen Archi also, both of them entered and followed their devotional service. And therefore, by doing this, Naradji, the Bhagavatam tells us, having spoken thus, the great sage Narad, along with his Veena, ascended into outer space. Yudhishthir kept his instruction in his heart, and so was able to get rid of lamentations. So just finally coming to it, last one, in summary, the knowledge to stop lamentation is Ishasyahi Vashe Loko Yosha Daru Mahi Yatha Jahi Vidhi Rakhe Ram Tahi Vidhi Rahiye. He is the controller. If I'm reminded of this, lamentation will be less. Matter is going to change. I am already in the mouth of time serpent. I cannot Sarp grasat yatha param. I cannot save anybody else. So what should I do instead of lamentation? I should look at Krishna. That is the bhakti yoga which Yudhishthir Maharaj got rid lamentation of. And that's why Archi also did not lament much. That's why Prabhupada writes in the purport that she was able to stop lamentation, because She focused on her prime duty, which was to follow her husband, who was a plenary expansion of Krishna and appeared as pure devotee. Prime duty was to do devotional service. And this is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, that one who looks towards the Lord will not be lamenting. Brahma bhut prasannatma na shochati na kankshati samah sarva bhuteshu mad bhakte labhate param. Na shochati na kankshati. One who is in devotional service, one who is situated, is looking at the Lord, meaning doing devotional service, becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. Yes, little lamentation will be there because so much association of the body, but little lamentation, but eventually the lamentation goes away because that person is in that state, he is doing pure devotional service. So the devotee of Krishna consciousness has nothing for which to lament or desire. He does not lament this. So therefore we can see how are the ways of stopping the lamentation. Various ways: Gyan Marg, Bhakti Marg, Karm Yog, and same is mentioned in Queen Archie's purport by Srila Prabhupada. The same we can see in Chitraketu's Katha. The same thing we can see in Naradji telling Yudhishthir Maharaj. So we can remind each other not to lament, but to look to the Lord and do devotional service. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnava Vranda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari. Please forgive me for any mistakes. Any comments, corrections, most welcome. My dandavats and my sincere gratitude for giving me this seva by the management of ICC. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Raghuveer, Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you for wonderful class, Prabhuji. After a long time, we are hearing from you. And I think for me personally, the message of today's class is follow the footsteps of pure devotees, senior Vaishnavas, and perform devotional service. And that's a pure message. And you have described so many verses from Srimad Bhagavatam on how to stop lamentation. Thank you, Prabhuji, for the wonderful class again. And I have unmuted the lines of the devotees. The devotees, they may share their questions or comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I have one very basic question right in the beginning, what you told. You said Prithu Maharaj protected his wife. How? Because he has left his body, and how he has protected the wife, leaving her in the forest?
Very well. So there are two visions to this. Everything, whatever we see, can be seen in two ways. One in the way of bodily concept, and the other is in the way of the soul concept. So while both of them were alive, he fully protected her, just like earth and all the citizens of the earth. And when he was a pure devotee, he is plenary expansion of Krishna. When he left in the forest, he passed away. Because he is pure devotee, he gave the thoughts to Archie to continue her devotional service. And Bhagavatam tells us that while it is not necessary to enter into funeral pyre, devotional service can be done, but her separation burning was more than the burning heat of the funeral pyre. So she followed the pure devotee. Bhagavatam tells us that first they were in two different aeroplanes. In the first aeroplane, he reached Vaikuntha Loka because he is plenary expansion anyway. And Archi Mata also followed in another chartered plane. She was exclusively given a second plane to reach the Vaikuntha planets. So this is the biggest protection which a pure devotee gives to the others, that to allow and enable the others to reach their home, go back to Godhead. So in that sense, while he was there in the on the earth, he protected. While he left, he still protected to ensure that she also reaches back to Godhead and not just keeps rotting in the material world. I hope Mataji it's of some use. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu, that means to say that we have to do our duties. And as you said, the focus on Krishna. You keep that Krishna as the center and he will take it
Yes.
back home. Yes.
Because Mataji, mind can only think one thing at a time. If the mind is focused on duty, we can see when people go through tragedies, we see that they want to join back quickly the office because then the mind gets engaged in work and the lamentation reduces. This is a very simple example. So then Bhagavatam is telling us that, and then anyway, that work should be done for Krishna. Yat karosi yadasnasi yat jahosi dadasi. Whatever we do has to be done for Krishna. So therefore, mind only can think one thing at a time. So if it is looking towards Krishna, doing duty and doing duty for Krishna, and doing devotional service, then lamentation automatically cannot come because mind can only think one thing at a time. Hope it helps.
Haripur Prabhu, thank you. That was from Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. And there are some comments I just want to read out. Devotees, are there any questions? You may please unmute your line and share your questions or realizations or comments. So there are a couple of messages, Prabhuji, from the devotees. Sumohini Gopika Mataji has mentioned, thank you, Prabhuji, for teaching the theory of not lamenting. Hare Krishna. Then Rani Mataji, I hope you saw the concluding slide. Prabhuji shared it again.
Actually, one slide, it's in between, not exactly concluding. I have Prabhuji posted with the yellow color one with the points. Look towards the Supreme Personality and Vadanti Tat with that slide. Can you put Prabhu once?
Yeah, I can put and I can send it to Prabhu also. Mine is just copy paste. I am only copy pasting. Anyway, 1 second. Where is this gone?
So and then Sri Charan Prabhu has mentioned, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you very much for giving such a wonderful class. And then Saraswati Mataji has mentioned, wonderful teaching Prabhuji, thank you very much, Hare Krishna. And then Ravi Lochana Gaurang Prabhu has commented, thank you for excellent and detailed sharing and your wonderful association. Dandavat, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. And then Venkatramana Prabhu has mentioned, thank you Prabhuji for a wonderful class which is relevant these days. So these are all the comments shared by the devotees in the chat window, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Raghuveer Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Dandot Pranam Prabhuji.
Wonderful nectar today. Thank you. Thank you for nice instructions.
Hare Prabhuji, all copy paste only. Hare Krishna. Please forgive me for any mistakes.
Hare Krishna, that was Prabhu.
Oh, Hare Krishna.
Thank you for
Hare Krishna. Hari Bol, Hari Hari.
Prabhu, thank you so much. Excellent class.
Thank you for the beautiful class, for teaching us on how to avoid lamentation. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Dandot Pranam. Please accept my obeisances. Dandovat, Dandovat. Rangraj Prabhu Malini Mataji. Okay, that one should I send Prabhu later or you should I, because I don't know about the time wise. So
You can send it. I'll share it with Mataji Prabhuji. No problem.
I'll send the PPT, Prabhu.
Okay, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Her Grace Prema Priya Radhika Mataji has sent us a message. Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for such a wonderful class. That's another comment, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhu.
They are appreciating Krishna.
So there are Prabhuji, we may end the class with Vaishnava Pranam. Prabhuji, we are looking forward to your association physically in Bangalore soon, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu. I am also looking forward. Just when things settle down, Krishna willing will be there to serve you all. And my sincere gratitude to all of you for giving me Sadhu Sangha and tolerating and just allowing me to serve Krishna in whatever little capacity I can, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you. Ancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindho meyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Antara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavanda ki jai.
Hi God, Premanand ki. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, devotees, and we will meet again tomorrow. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
I'm ending the Zoom session. Thank you.